Good day, good people. My name is Brad King, and you are watching and listening to Downtown Writers Jam video podcast, which is part of the Solid Listen podcast network. Coming to you from deep inside the jam bunker on this beautiful, beautiful fall day. I hope it is nice wherever you are. Lady Pepper is still with us for a few more days. Still doesn't give a shit about me talking to the computer. She is resting peacefully in her doggy bed next to the couch. I am excited for today's show. We have our good friend Louise Fein on the program. We had her on in May of 2020, which feels like a million years ago. It's episode 54, almost 100 episodes between when she was on before and now. Her second book, The Hidden Child, is out in Europe, Canada, US, all over the place. So her first book, People Like Us, that was the title over in Europe. It's Daughter of the Reich in the US and Canada. Came out in 2020 and was inspired by experiences of her family who fled Leipzig as refugees in 1933. That book was published in 13 territories and was shortlisted for a couple different prizes. It was fantastic and sad and all of that stuff. She has an MA in creative writing from St. Mary's, lives in Surrey with her family, and The Hidden Child, like I said, out in September in Europe, October over here in North America. And she's currently working on her third novel, which is good because she has become one of my favorite writers. Was really one of my introductions to historical fiction. And like her first book, The Hidden Child also is based on her own personal experiences. Although, if you read the author's note, it's stuff that's happening with her family now. And then she sort of wraps that around this eugenics movement that happened in America and Europe, sort of pre-World War II, and then obviously into World War II. It is deeply sad, the world that she creates, which is sort of becoming her thing because she's writing about very hard things, but also the characters are great. I just hit some of the twists in the book. So that's good. Like there's some hope, that kind of stuff. I'm really excited to have her on the program. She's just one of my favorite people, and I think you guys will love having her again. A little bit of business before we get there. The video podcast every Monday and Friday, and the jam proper comes out on Wednesdays. A couple things you can do to help us out. I want you to think about book lovers that you have in your life, and I want you to tell them about our program. Turn them on to us. That's the best way for us to spread the word. And leave us a review. So if you have an iPhone, you listen on Apple Podcasts, leave us a starred review and a little bit of writing. Like, tell us what you think. If you don't, head on over to the Facebook page, go to the review tab, and leave us a review. That's the Writers Jam. That's our Facebook page. And I know, like, all you listeners, all you new folks and stuff are like, I'll get to it. Like, do that shit now. That is the way that we spread the word, and it will help us out tremendously. And more importantly, it'll help all these authors reach new audiences. Over at the writersjam.com, our website, a couple things you can do. Always, you can check out the video podcast. If you're looking for books, we have book reviews. You can click on our bookshop link. You can buy from independent and small bookstores across the country. It's the lifeblood of authors. We need to keep our local and independent bookstores open, running, and thriving. You can also sign up for our monthly newsletter. And you can support everybody on the Solid Listen Network by clicking on that Patreon button. And when you do that, for just a couple bucks a month, you get commercial-free episodes and all kind of bonus content from everybody on the network. And Nicole and Malls are building this thing out. We have a lot of great programming. Malls and I just recorded a thing around Kidneygate, which is the Grub Street literary kerfuffle that just happened, the bad art friend. So you can get all that kind of stuff. It's behind the Patreon wall, and it literally is just a couple bucks a month, and that helps us keep the lights on the whole network. This is fun having Louise back on. One of the great joys of doing this show is meeting authors and people who I find fascinating and interesting and neat. And it's always great to, like, I interviewed her like right when her first book came out in the pandemic. For authors, like, it was just a really painful time for people that had spent their whole lives getting this and then having this worldwide catastrophe happen and never being able to really like celebrate this because of all this stuff happening. So to be here with her on her second book, which is getting tremendous reviews everywhere. And as she's finishing up her third book, I feel like I got to sort of ground floor her journey. And that, to me, as someone who loves books and writers and literature and all of that stuff, like, there's nothing better. So I'm super excited for her to be on the show today. I hope you will go by The Hidden Child. Thanks for stopping by the bunker to spend some time with me and Lady Pepper for the next few days. I hope that your day is going well and that you're taking care of yourself and each other. Get the shots, get the booster, wear your mask, do all the things that we need to do to take care of each other. Let's get our asses back out in the world. But for the next 30 minutes or so, I hope that you will sit back and enjoy my conversation with the wonderful and talented and funny and witty and charming Louise Fein.
It's really interesting, people's reaction to the book. And a lot of people have said, oh, it's heavier, it's darker, it's more upsetting than the first one. And I was thinking, what is more upsetting than the Holocaust? You know, how does that, how can it be more upsetting? And I think there's two reasons for it. I think obviously one, it's got small child in it, and it's a bit like small children and pets. You just cannot be cruel to them in books. It's just, you know, so that's one thing. But I think the other thing is, like, when people write about the Nazis and the atrocities that happened in Germany, and you're reading it in the UK or in America, it's okay because it was over there. It wasn't in your country. But when it's about your country, it feels more personal or more, you know. So maybe that's the reason why. I don't know. Anyway, that's my latest theory.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's that you know, when we think of the Holocaust is so big, right? Like we always speak in numbers of 6 million, 10 million. And so those are just numbers that doesn't matter, you know, they don't resonate as an individual. But you know, I got a goddaughter. Like, you're reading this and it's literally about, like, the centerpiece of all the discussions are about this child. And you're just like, if you know anything about the history of mental health stuff, you're like, well, this is not going to end. Like, it was really the dark ages until very, 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 very recently.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing, like what we talked about, was I knew like the first book was about your, like, you know, we talked about it. So your dad and that sort of grandfather, but we had also talked off air and in other times about your life and your daughter and that stuff. So the other reason that I know where the question of this book comes from, which is not 1920, right? Like, it's today.
That's it. Yeah, it's today. Yeah.
So for me, that's why it was heavy. I was like, oh shit, this is a deeply personal book in a very, very different way than the first book was deeply personal.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I think this book, I was always going to write this book, but I had to wait until there was enough space away from the, you know, it was too raw to write it earlier.
Yeah. Well, that's why I jumped to, I said the other day, like, I jumped to the author's note because I'm like, I don't think I'm misremembering this. I think that we had this discussion. And like 8 seconds into the author's note, I'm like, oh yeah, no, this is how come it was hitting me, because
that's right. Yeah.
Because of your stuff. Yeah. And also the space is important. Like, I mean, you couldn't have written it. I mean,
I don't think I could have written it either if I hadn't had such a good, or we haven't been lucky enough to have such a good outcome with my daughter.
Yeah.
It would have been much more difficult. But yeah, so, I mean, I know you haven't finished the book, but it's not all awful. There is a good outcome. There is a reason why it's set in the 20s.
Yeah.
Which will be obvious later.
Well, it's funny because as I was doing some recording today, and I'm like, I just reached the halfway point and there's kind of some hope. I'm like, I do see a light. I see some things that might be happening. Like,
yeah, but mind you, if you've read the author's note, you might have had a clue anyway from that. So
well, I stopped halfway through. I really read it because I was like, I think this is hitting me because this is like, again, you're pulling from family stuff and then using historical things as a frame for that. Which is, I mean, it's, you know, I never say writers are brave because we write stuff because we have to. Like, nobody does this because they are, you know, trying to be brave. You know, it's a question and just trying to sort of parse through what it all means, right? Like, that's
I think so. And I think stories just get get to you, and they just demand to be told sometimes. It's like the one I'm writing now. It's not anything to do with any of my family. You'll be pleased to hear that. But it's just it wants to come out, and then sometimes it won't leave you alone, and you just have to tell that story. So
do you think when that one comes out, because my guess is there's some question that came out of that, the family stuff seems to be very important to you in the creative process, at least in terms of the question and the thing that sort of hits you as a story. Do you think that you'll get to the end and be like, oh shit, that actually does have a connection to my family? Not as direct as the other two, or is this really off?
No, this is not family related. I think though that by bringing it, I mean, they're kind of big themes in my books. But by bringing it down to a level of the individual, or a family, it's much more relatable too, if that makes sense. So
no, 100%.
Yeah. So I usually start off with a theme. So I've got a theme for the latest one.
It's interesting. Kind of so do you think that it's harder because it doesn't have that family stuff in it? Or, I mean, writing novels is just always hard. There's never an easy time.
No, that's true. That's true. No, I don't think that's what it is. I think that I've got a lot of threads going on in it. And so it's got it's got a bit messy in the middle, because it's like when to pull all these threads together and where they should converge, and maybe there's too many threads. I need to just get to the end of this draft and think, okay, do I need to strip this back? So it otherwise, because it's got to still have that main theme that runs all the way through, and you can have subplots, but it can't be too confusing. So I'm not sure yet. I was talking with a literary agent today, and we were laughing about the show. I'm like, well, don't ask about process, because this is great. Oh my God, it's not. Oh no, what's happening? And it's published. I like it. That's the version of some version of like. Gosh, I know.
So your first book, it was well received and all of that stuff. Like, just, I mean, literally you're working on your third book, and it's like you're like 3 or 4 years into the actual publishing cycle of all these things. Like, have you had a chance just to sit back and be like, holy shit, this is happening? Like, no, I don't think so, because it's not even 3 or 4 years, is it? Because the first one came out in 2020, which was last year. But you had like a year, like, I mean, you had I had up to that.
2019. No, that's true. So it's I think the second one, I think with the whole lockdown and the intensity of writing the second book, I've just gone, which is partly why it's taken me longer with this one. So I think I couldn't do that pace. I know lots of people turn out a book a year. I don't think I can do that. It's like, it will be 18 months, I think, for this one before I turn it in, sort of thing. So I can't do a book a year. I can't. That's it.
I love the the trauma of success is what we call that here on the show. Like, hooray! Like, oh no.
Well, it's like, it's amazing. It's the best thing, your book has come out and it's doing its thing, and that's wonderful, but you can't just sit back and enjoy that. You have to get on with the next one.
Well, and like, I was saying today, like, I rarely have gotten to the point where I'm reading the books. I usually read after, but this one, obviously,
you must be reading all the time.
All the time
to keep up.
But it is, you can, and I don't want to do craft stuff, but like this world feels bigger than the last world you created. Like the last one, and this, like, just reading this book, I'm like, oh, there is, even though it's only about a few people, but the few people are sort of out in different places, and they're each encompassing, like, eugenics is a big thing, and like, so you're not just like, I gave a talk, like, you're bringing in all of the stuff, and it feels like you've gotten a handle on, oh, this is how I build a world. This is the kind of stuff that I like to build. And you can see that growth in this book. So I'm also wondering in the third book, like, because building a world is a thing, right? And like, once you get into it, it's really easy to get lost in building the world.
Definitely. I mean, with this one, I've got it too.
Yeah.
I was really lucky because I was able to go and do physical research before lockdown.
Yeah.
So I went to this what was an epilepsy colony, and I went in and I looked at their archives, and I was able to walk around the place and see the layout and understand how it all was. And of course, you know,
yeah,
it was, I found it quite difficult and distressing. So for about a week as well, I went to this local history center where, again, I got all the archives of local asylums and epilepsy colonies and looked through all the case notes, and I found that really grueling. It was a tough week because and I've toned it down for the book. I can tell you I've toned it down.
Wow.
I mean, it was so upsetting, and just the way they spoke about the people in the colony, and just, you know, at best matter of fact, and at worst, you know, they really hated these people. They hated their patients, and there was no love for them at all.
Yeah.
So that was hard, and all their little pictures were there, you know, and I just felt like I needed to look at all of them, and sort of, because they were never out in the light, you know, they were locked away all their lives. And that was hard.
I mean, hard, like there must have been a lot of tears. Like that's how do you do that without, I couldn't do that.
I don't know. I just felt it was just, it was tough. It was really tough.
Yeah.
And I don't want to write a book that depressing again. No, I mean, it wasn't, I tried to make the book not depressing.
But I mean, like
but there are hard things. It's, you know, it's a tough subject matter.
Yeah. I mean, it's eugenics, and we know what it leads to. So there's no real way. And we also know, like, if you know anything about mental health, like, I mean, institutionalization in this country, I mean, into the 70s and 80s were, I mean, it was
definitely.
So this is not even a thing that we're like, well, we obviously learned and changed. Like,
I know.
Did we though? You know, like.
Yeah, exactly. I know. And some of these only closed in the 1990s. So pretty recently. I know colonies. They changed their names, and they weren't called colonies anymore. They were called, you know, whatever.
Right. But
other institutions, but it's kind of the same thing.
Wow. Wow.
But also, but for the latest book, just talking of the practicalities, for the latest book, it's set all over the place. So I've got some of it in Montana, I've got some of it in the Far East, it's all over the place. So that I'm struggling a little bit with, because I really like to go everywhere and walk the places. And I'm spending a lot of time on Google Maps and looking at photos. And I was really lucky. I got in touch with a farmer. We had a Zoom chat, and he walked me around all his equipment, and so that was all quite fun. It's amazing how you make these weird connections.
Yes, it is.
But but you know, what can you do when you're sort of unable to travel? And I would, you know, I can't really justify flying all over the world for my book. Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, hopefully we get there. But this is to my point that, like, I feel like you are developing this ability to build a world, right? And so now, like, literally the first one was here, and then the second one is, and now you're like, well, this next one's going to involve, like, this seems like the groove that you are getting into is sort of building that thing. And, you know, we've talked about on the show so many times, like, being a writer, fiction, nonfiction, doesn't matter. You can't just sit in your four walls and create something. Creativity comes from the world.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
completely.
not being in it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. Definitely.
And particularly for someone like you, whose stuff is so world building, is so, like, that is what, at least for me, like, reading these, you know, and I'm now 2 books into your stuff, like, that is what makes the thematic stuff come out, right? Is that this isn't a lecture. This is here is this world that I've built, and this is what happened, and nobody thinks they're the bad guy. Right, like, none of these people think they're the, and that's the point, right? And that you see how that all mixes together, and you're like, shit. So not being able to be out there, it has to be outside of just
I think you can do it. Of course you can.
Sure.
You just need to spend a bit more time And I think that's why it's taking me longer, because I'm having to research so many different things in different ways. But you can go out now. So I spent a lot of time at the British Library, which is an amazing resource, actually. And, just down to, I found this amazing book in there, which is just maps of Montana with, everything, it was written in 1960, so perfect timing. The weather, the roads, the railways, just everything, all the little towns and the tiny differences between the weather and where all the crops were grown. And, it's a lifesaver. So, so that sort of thing's really helpful, because even if you look at climate now, we all know it's changed from what it was in the 60s. And I just want to be as authentic as I can.
Yeah.
So,
in fact, we were laughing today. It's like, well, there seems to be 2 climates now, really hot or really cold. Like there doesn't seem to be or not a climate, weather. Like there's no, what's it like today? Like summer, what's it like today? Winter. Like we are now in the screwed part of climate change. And so you woke up to some super good news the other day about The Hidden Child.
I did. It was a complete shock. So it was number 8 on the Globe and Mail bestseller chart in Canada. So Canada, I love you.
And it was surrounded by some names.
I know. It was a huge surprise. And actually, I'll tell you a funny little story which is relevant to this, because I'm number 8 and number 7 is Anthony Horowitz. Now, about 4 or 5 years ago, my husband and I went on a anniversary weekend to a place in Italy, in southern, sort of on the coast in Italy. And for our anniversary, and we sat and we had dinner outside, as you do, on this beautiful little restaurant overlooking the sea. And all the tables were really close together, and we were sat. So this was way before I had any book deals or agents or anything. I was struggling my way through book 1. And we were sat next to this couple, and we got talking to them because they were really close to our table. We were practically sitting on the same table, and they were really lovely. And, we got to the bit where, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a writer. And she said, oh, my brother's a writer. And I felt such an idiot, because she said, he's written lots of books. His 25th book or something's coming out, and it's Anthony Horowitz. Have you heard of him? And I was like, oh my God, I've just said I'm a writer. This is so embarrassing.
Because you know what the next question is going to be from them.
Well, anyway, so she was really lovely about it. And I was like, oh my God, this is really embarrassing. And so it was Anthony Horowitz's sister. And then just before The Hidden Child was published, HarperCollins put this thing up saying these books are coming out this week, and there was my book next to his book, and I was like, oh my gosh, isn't this just amazing?
Right.
And then of course this bestseller list comes out, and I'm right next to him on this chart. So it was like, how amazing is that? Just a few years later. So,
and also as you sort of experience, I mean, that's the existential horror of a writer. Like, oh, I'm a writer. And then somebody's like, oh, my person does this. And you're like, I'm
not
a different
a writer.
Kind of writer.
I'm just an idiot.
Yeah. I was just talking. I was just saying things. Now shit.
I'm not a proper one. He's a proper one. I'm just a pretend one.
But that's amazing, right? Like it's it is not shocking to me. Because again, like you have a voice, and you have this ability to build these worlds and to do it just feels personal. Like these books feel personal when you're reading them, because the people are real, and all this stuff really happened, and the depth of research that you've done. Every time I read something, I'm like, I know this isn't made up. Like, I know there's some things that are made up, but I'm like, all of this is like, I'm learning something about the terribleness of people. And it's just great. And I couldn't be happier for you, because I know that first book was a big surprise, and like now you're on to, like, you're doing it, like you're on the ride now.
Thank you. Well, I don't know. I mean, everything's a risk. You never know it, but you just do your thing, and wings its way out there. You have no control. So whatever happens.
This is like the most, I'd have to do this with every writer. I'm like, you're doing it. Every writer is predisposed to be like, no, it's all going to go away. It's a fraud. It's fake. I'm not, this is luck. It's all, I don't know why people are reading my book.
Yeah, so I know. Well, honestly, I like when that chart came out, I was like waiting for the next email to say, sorry, this is just a big mistake. They added 2 noughts on by mistake. Yeah. You're not meant to be there. Someone added it up wrong.
But this is the thing, right? Like this is every writer. This is like what we do. And it's why anytime I'm on these programs, I'm like, okay, that everything you just said is bullshit. Yeah, we don't have control over things, but there is a certain amount of luck, right, to getting on it. There is, but completely. All of that is an outcome of talent, effort, all of those. Like luck doesn't happen without the 95% of stuff that comes before it. And I just remember I re-listened to our conversation, and it's like in these last couple of years, like you've done the work, like you can see the growth, you can see it all happening, and then you can see the outcome of that. And I just couldn't be happier.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
And I got it. I've been telling everybody to go get it. This is going to be on my list of things to give for Christmas. And I appreciate you spending time with me. And when I get to London next year, I hope we can all get together.
That would be amazing. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to chat again.
Yeah, I know. It's good to see. Like, I feel like we all know each other, and I always forget, like, oh yeah, none of us know each other. Like we just do about every
well, no, we do.
months.
We do. All the D20 authors, I know you've chatted a lot to them. Yeah. So we'd never met, but now lots of us have met in real life, and you do literally know them. So it's like meeting old friends. And
it's going to be funny because I'm going to roll in there and like literally I know each of you separately, because I know a lot of them will show up and it'll be like, oh, the old new friends.
Yeah. So there is something we can thank the pandemic for. Not much, but something.
Yeah. Well, you have a great day. I'm excited to finish this book. I've now been promised that there's a little hope in it, so that'll help me keep going.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Have a great day.
Care. You too.
Well, there you have it. That was my friend Louise Fein, whose book, The Hidden Child, is out right now. See, I'm in the middle of reading it. This is one of the rare times that I've talked to somebody whose book I'm in the middle of reading. If you've listened to the show, you've heard me talk about her in the past. I love her. She's fantastic. This book is really good. But like I told her, it is a deep, sad world that she's created in here, which seems to be sort of her thing since it's historical fiction based on a lot of fucked up things that have happened. So I'm glad that she joined us. I hope you will go pick up the book. It's a stellar read. Before we get out of here, just a couple reminders. If you like what you heard today on the show, do us those 2 favors we talked about at the top. Tell a book lover in your life about the show. It's the best way for us to spread the word. And leave us a review. If you have an iPhone and you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can leave us a star and a written review. Otherwise, head on over to the Facebook page, The Writers Jam, and you can leave us a review there. Don't forget to check out all the other programs on the Solid Listen Network, including the flagship Mother May I Sleep With podcast, with host and our Solid Listen podcast queen, Molly McLear. The video podcasts come out every Monday and Friday. You can catch those on the Solid Listen Network YouTube channel. You can also head over to thewritersjam.com, or you can listen to the audio wherever you listen to the jam. And that comes out every Wednesday. The surest way not to miss anything that we do is get subscribed. And remember, you can always catch us on Twitter and Instagram at The Writers Jam. Until the next time, I'll see you around the internet.